Hi everyone, this is Himanshu Sehgal from PharmaShots, and with me is David Dodd from GeoVax. Thank you, David, for taking out time to talk to us. Just for the audience, GeoVax is basically a spotlight company with us, and GeoVax is doing some amazing work. We are with David, who is the CEO of the company, and he's gonna talk about the company, the leading molecules and the technologies and so on and so forth. So it's going to be an action-packed interview. So just hold on to your seat and listen to David. So thank you, David. So before we jump to actually the more actionable and more subject matter questions. I would like you to talk about GeoVax, also about a little bit about the team management, and also if you would like to talk about the scientific advisory board of the GeoVax, in a gist, basically.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to be here and be part of this interview. I appreciate that. Pardon me. So GeoVax it's a NASDAQ company. So it's a publicly traded company that's listed on the NASDAQ market. We are clinical stage. So we're pre-revenue, but clinical stage, focused on two assets are in phase 2 programs that we'll talk about today. One is a cancer therapy. Initial indication is addressing people with advanced head and neck cancers. And the other asset that's in phase 2 trials is a next generation COVID-19 vaccine. And we'll talk about both of those now. But the company was founded in 2001. It was a spin-out company out of Emory University, out of the Emory Vaccine Center. And at that time, it was solely focused on developing a preventive vaccine against HIV. And that was in 2001. So if you think back at that point, they were not the antiviral drugs that we have today, which are so valuable in enabling people who have HIV to by and large lead a full life and all, which prior to that, there was not that opportunity. And so there was a lot of energy and activity being funded by the NIH and other groups around the world to try and develop and achieve a HIV vaccine. Even today, there still is no successful development of an HIV preventive vaccine. The company pursued this endeavor, ended up working solely on it until 2014. I had become involved with the company in 2010. Investor as well as a board member. And then in 2011 had become the chairman of the board, but it was only in late 2018 that I became the CEO. I'm the third CEO in the history of the company. So prior to that, in 2014, we made a strategic decision to look beyond HIV, not instead of, but beyond that. And the reason why was there was not much investment sentiment that we could determine to support companies that, especially if you were solely focused on trying to develop a vaccine in that area. And there was not a lot of funding still coming out of NIH and under other sort of non-dilutive funding agencies. So we began to look and see, can we apply our know-how and the understanding that we have in vaccine development elsewhere? And we were, in fact, very successful in doing that. The first initiative was in the area of Ebola Zaire when we had the outbreak in 2014. We're very successful in that area. We ended up being funded by NIH for also doing the Ebola Sudan and the Marburg. We also did a Zika virus vaccine with great success. All of these through animal models and all. And we did work on malaria that we were funded by the U.S. Department of AID. So from that standpoint, Agency for International Development, we developed a lot, and we even moved into the oncology area with our basic platform. Then in 2020, we had the opportunity, we recapitalized the company, we successfully qualified and uplisted on NASDAQ. The company had become public in 2006 through a reverse merger with a technology company that had pretty much gone out of business but had some cash there. But what we ended up doing in 2020 was listing on NASDAQ, moving the company forward, and also focusing on acquiring the rights to 2 assets, which are now the 2 assets that are in phase 2. We knew about these products. They fit us very nicely, and we went after them, and we successfully acquired worldwide rights for the technologies and the products behind them. And towards the end of 2021, that led to, in 2022, putting in the infrastructure and moving everything forward. And today we're very active in the process with both of these assets in phase 2. So that's the history essentially of the company. Now, in that, as I mentioned, I'm the 3rd CEO with the company. I have a long history in the pharmaceuticals and vaccine industry. I've led some major companies and players. I ran the U.S. operation of Wyeth before it was part of Pfizer, so that included all U.S. pharmaceuticals and vaccines. I was general manager at Bristol Myers Squibb and ran a division there. I was CEO for Solvay Pharmaceuticals. So I had been involved in a lot of different areas, worked with a lot of wonderful teammates and all, some of whom are still working with me today. That's what happens. You develop relationships. You know how each other can work together. So we've got a very strong team today with deep bench strength, so to speak, to be able to build this company and move it forward. We're focused primarily on the developments behind the phase 2 programs and supportive types of programs. And again, as a pre-revenue company, it's always about building the balance sheet so that we have the resources to be able to drive at the pace we'd like to get to data milestones, so that we can understand to what degree do we have a product, or do we have something that was perhaps good science but is not going to make it in the actual product development area. So that's what we're focused on. That's sort of the history of both the company, myself. We do have a very strong scientific advisory board with some real leaders in the field from both vaccines and other areas such as oncology or infectious diseases. So we're very proud of that, and we continue to look to see how we can enhance our scientific advisory board.
Awesome, great. A very enriched history of the company, and some really interesting facts that and the areas where the company has worked in. So thank you for that. Now, actually, directly jumping to your lead molecule, which is GEO CM04S1, which is basically a COVID-19 vaccine. So I mean, the primary question would be, there are so many vaccines right now already approved. Uh, some are at a global level, like Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Oxford AstraZeneca, and many more. And there are some regional vaccines also, from a country specifically, like multiple vaccines from China, Russia, India. So why do you think there is still a need of a new vaccine, and let alone a next generation vaccine, basically? So,
Well, it's an excellent question, and it's one that should be asked, and because the answer is very insightful, I believe, is if all the vaccines essentially were adequate for all the relevant populations, then one would have, I think, a very good case to argue or to raise to say, why do we need another one? Why do we need another vaccine? I mean, someone may say, well, because I want to make a vaccine and I know how to make a vaccine. But that doesn't mean you're going to be successful and it's going to be a benefit for the stakeholders as well, including your shareholders. No. However, if there is a need out there for vaccines, which has been well documented thus far, in the sense that the current authorized vaccines, they have several challenges behind them. They all are built around a focus on very strong antibody stimulation. Antibody stimulation is very important because that's the first line of defense from our immune system to an infectious threat. However, what we're dealing with SARS-CoV-2 is a highly evasive virus, and it has been shown to continue to evolve. We started with the ancestral Wuhan strain, and today, at least in the United States, we're talking about JN1. Last summer, we were all talking about the Omicron XBB 1.5, which was the threat. And what we have learned in the real world is that all of the authorized vaccines are focused on inducing a very strong antibody response. The downside is that by just focusing on the antibody response, you're not addressing the cellular or T cell response. And T cells play a very important role in providing memory and durability. And so what we have today are vaccines that in the real world, we're seeing that they are 2 to 4 months in terms of durability. We were all told initially that they had 94, 95% efficacy and would work up to a year. And what the real world is now showing and even documenting from the CDC and all is that they're at best 50% in terms of efficacy, depending how you define efficacy, and they work for 2 to 4 months. And then with the new variants, we continue to have to reconfigure them. And it takes a while. And by the time we come out with either a reconfigured bivalent or whatever the next reconfiguration is, we're halfway to the next variant of concern. And even more importantly, there are in the United States approximately 15 million individuals, and that translates to over 240 million worldwide. These are patients who have certain medical conditions such as blood cancers. They may have renal disease, kidney disease. They may have sickle cell anemia. They may actually be transplant patients who are on immunosuppressive drugs, which in and of itself holds down the role of the antibody immune system. So these individuals are not served well, or if at all, by the current authorized vaccines because their bodies have been depleted or ablated in the ability to respond to antibody stimulation. That means then that we need next generation vaccines that are either more robust being defined as broader in immune response, incorporating or inducing not only antibody, but also cellular immunity to be able to thwart these variants as they continue to emerge rather than chasing after them, and also giving us durability that is 8, if not 12 months that we can count on. And that's what we need. And so today we've got populations of individuals throughout the world who have compromised immune systems because of their medical conditions by and large, and they are not served by the current vaccines. So for a company such as GeoVax, looking at a population of 15 million in the US, 240 million worldwide, that's a very large market if we can construct a vaccine that can meet the needs of those patients, recognizing that the current vaccines, the mRNA vaccines, which are the Pfizer, the Moderna, the BioNTech, or if we look at a protein adjuvant vaccine for instance, from Novavax, or if we look at an adenovirus-based vaccine from AstraZeneca, all of those are all constructed to induce very strong antibody responses. The unfortunate element is those authorized vaccines are inadequate for individuals with compromised immune system. The GeoVax vaccine, CM04S1, as we refer to it, or GEO CM04S1, it is actually constructed to specifically induce not only strong antibody responses, but also T cells. And in doing that, to address this unserved population or populations, because it's really different groups of individuals now who are unserved by the current vaccines. And the clinical data that we have been presenting and has been published over the last year on our product shows that our vaccine, in fact, induces statistically significant superior responses in antibody responses and T cell responses to the mRNA vaccines, and we're seeing durability now at 8 to 12 months. So we are hitting on what we were hoping to see, which is in immunocompromised populations, our vaccine is going to make a difference. And so why should we be sort of playing in this game or competing in this game, jumping into this very intensely competitive environment, is we believe that we will be able to focus on the populations that are not being served by the current vaccines, and we won't have to deal with them as direct competitors. We also have underway, and just a week and a half ago, we released the initial data on this. We have a candidate, the same vaccine is being tested, so it's not a different vaccine. It's the GEO CM04S1 as a universal booster to be applied to vaccines, especially mRNA vaccines. So people who are otherwise healthy, who may have received the mRNA vaccine as their primary vaccine, our data is showing that we provide significantly different, more robust, more durable impact by being applied on top of the vaccine that they've already received, which is an mRNA. So that's the approach we're taking, and why we believe it's very important and very valuable for our company and our stakeholders and our shareholders that we're in this next generation vaccine development and competition. Right now, our product is the most advanced next generation candidate that is in clinical trials in the world.
Okay, thank you. This is, very interesting to know. And just to sum it up for, about this question. So basically, GEO vaccine is for it's basically targeting a huge unmet need within the immunocompromised patients, and also for upcoming variants of SARS-CoV virus, basically, which could be Omicron or beyond Omicron, obviously, and other upcoming variant where our existing vaccines, whether it's mRNA or any other type of vaccines, are less effective or ineffective, basically. So that's what GeoVax is planning to target. Did I understand it right?
Yes, and I like to underscore, it's not that, for instance, the current authorized vaccines are ineffective among these patient populations. It's the fact that these patient populations, their bodies have been ablated in their ability to respond to those vaccines, which means they need to rely on their T cell or their cellular immunity. So that's an important, it's a subtle but important distinction in there, but it's very important to look at that. And the other is the aspect of a universal booster vaccine. I mean, people have seen that just simply having another mRNA vaccine or an updated mRNA vaccine, given that they've already had a primary vaccine, that is not giving them the durability or the breadth of protection, because the next variant requires them to have to get a different one. And I just spoke to someone last night whose father is a kidney transplant patient, and he's now on his 8th or 9th vaccination because he has to keep getting a different mRNA. Those are the patients that we want to be able to come forward and give them one. Right now, as I said, we're showing 8 to 12 months of durability, and we're showing protective immune levels from the ancestral strain all the way through the XBB 1.5. As I mentioned, we're currently having tested against the JN1 variant. So yeah, that's you sort of captured it well, but I did want to make that distinction about the other vaccines versus ours.
Okay, so you also spoke about again. We are extending to the same conversation. You said about that it's being assessed in immunocompromised patients. So presently, I could see that it's in phase 2 for CLL patients and other immunocompromised, I think, oncology-based patient. But would it be right to say that an HIV patient whose immune system, because again, you have had a history of HIV, trials and molecules. That's the reason I'm asking this question specifically. So, an HIV patient whose immune system is compromised, probably, in a theory, at least we can say that geo vaccine should be working or providing immune coverage to that kind of a patient as well. Is it safe to say that?
We receive requests on an ongoing basis from the HIV community interested in our evaluation among that population. And they reach out because they know us. We have relationships from the days when we were most actively and highly focused on the HIV area. However, as a small company, everyone ought to be able to appreciate we can only do so much. We're a small company. We have limited resources. Our balance sheet is always, no matter how much cash you have, you always need more, because you want to always be funding to be able to accelerate the pace of it. So what we have done is, like most people do, we have to set priorities and sort of triage. So we currently have 3 phase 2 trials underway, 2 of which are in immunocompromised. One is the stem cell transplant blood cancer patients. The other one are the chronic lymphocytic leukemia blood cancer patients. And then the third one is our healthy volunteer booster trial, which is now fully enrolled. And in fact, last week we released initial data coming out of that trial, but we'll be monitoring them through the end of third quarter this year. HIV is a very important area, is one that we believe could be better served receiving our vaccine for the simple reason that they do have depleted immune system. So we think that would be good. But again, we have to set up priorities. We were very interested, for instance, in doing a trial among patients with renal disease, kidney disease type patients and all, as well as diabetic patients. We have a lot of requests for that, and we're in discussions right now that will likely lead to protocol development with partners that would like to pursue, for instance, renal disease as well as the diabetic patients. So we're looking at different ones, but you're right, that would be a good fit for sure. HIV would be.
Awesome. So not just the present molecules or present clinical trials are robust, your pipeline also looks very robust, and you seems to be, going to be busy with a lot of multiple studies moving forward. So yeah, hope for the best, and fingers crossed. So just one another question comes to mind, because you said that you have recently published you know results from healthy volunteers, where who are not immunocompromised. Let's make it easy, who are not immunocompromised. So uh, you have released phase 2 results. So based on phase 1 data, or maybe from the phase 2 results, interim results, um, where do you think the vaccine is doing better, in the immunocompromised patients? Or, I mean, when we compare, I know this is not, a right comparison, because immunocompromised patients have their different needs, and healthy volunteers or healthy patients have their different need. But in terms of just plain, immune response, or generating the T cells and the protection against COVID vaccine, where would the vaccine have better edge, in healthy volunteers, or sorry, healthy patients, or in immunocompromised patients?
Well, I think it depends on how you evaluate it. In the trial that we have fully enrolled now, and that we just recently released the initial data on, the final report will come out around the end of the year, because we monitor these patients for 12 months, and that'll end at the end of September of this year.
Okay.
But what we just recently issued as a press release within the last week and a half was where we have healthy individuals who all received as their primary vaccine an mRNA vaccine. So either the Pfizer, BioNTech, or the Moderna. And then we are applying, rather than giving them another mRNA vaccine as a booster, they're receiving ours.
Mhm.
We believe the data is showing, and what we saw in the initial one is a significantly strong response on both neutralizing antibodies as well as T cells coming from ours. The key will be to see how that stays for durability,
Yeah.
because that's where we think we will show the advantage as a booster in otherwise healthy individuals. Among immunocompromised patients, we have seen data. There was data that was published in the peer-reviewed journal Vaccines last September, and that came from our stem cell transplant trial. And it showed, again, both from neutralizing antibodies as well as the T cell responses, statistically significant improvement and in that trial, we're doing a direct comparison against mRNA vaccine. So and it's a primary vaccine. So these are individuals, their bodies have been depleted of their antibody level to be ready to receive stem cell transplantation. They receive our vaccine or an mRNA vaccine, and then they're then monitored over time. So in that one, we think that without a doubt, to get to the root question you had, is that we will show that our vaccine provides more robust, meaning antibody and T cells, and the breadth of it against various variants without having to reconfigure it, as well as durability. And that we would anticipate, because we know right now that it's 2 to 4 months from mRNA vaccines. We're seeing in our current trial, we're seeing 8 and closer to 12 months now. So there's data now that's showing that we're converging towards this 12 months for terms of durability. So we think that that where we will have the edge and where we're going to position from a business standpoint, our product to compete against in the marketplace will be in the immunocompromised. But we think there's an opportunity that we could greatly benefit as a preferred booster that is utilized on top of, of whatever authorized that vaccine. It could be an AstraZeneca vaccine, it could be an mRNA vaccine, it could be a Novavax vaccine. So we think that with that type of what they refer to as heterologous booster type of vaccine, that we will be able to show an advantage there. But from a business standpoint, based upon what we believe the data is showing, and hopefully will continue to show, is that we have an advantage, and we ought to. Our goal is to become the preferred vaccine against COVID-19 for people with compromised immune systems. So that gets to your answer there.
Thank you. Thank you. Pretty good. And just last question about the geo vaccine, because I know then we have to discuss about the other molecule as well. So last question about geo vaccine. You said that phase 2 with different immunocompromised patients is going on, and phase 2 results and obviously initial results from a booster dose trial is also on the way. So what would be the timeline about phase 3, and whether or not, because again, you are working in a very niche audience and a very specific audience. So is there a plan to go for some sort of a designation pathway with FDA and other regulatory bodies? And third part to this specific question would be, when do you expect this to, it's a rough idea, when do you expect this this vaccine to hit the market and start being sold? What could be the projection in terms of availability, I would say? So one question with three parts.
Sure, it is, and it all fits together, and it's an excellent question. I'll just say again. First of all, indeed, we believe that there is an expedited registration pathway available by focusing on immunocompromised patient populations. We've been in deep discussions with consultants. We plan to go forward with those discussions with regulatory authorities, and those discussions will continue to evolve during this year. Now, we believe also that as a booster for otherwise healthy individuals, adults, et cetera, that would require a traditional phase 3 trial. Mm-hmm. And that is another reason that we look at, acceleration, what are expedited pathways as part of our overall business strategy. And that's where the immunocompromised gives us an opportunity, we believe, to move faster. We're in discussions with ministers of health throughout the world, and in some locations where they have not been well served or had not had access to COVID-19 vaccines, but they have populations at high risk. We believe in some of those settings because they're reaching out to us as they learn about our results, wanting to know, would we consider partnering with them and doing clinical trials in their environment? We're always interested in those discussions, and we take those very seriously. So to answer your question, expedited regulatory pathways relative to immunocompromised, we believe are feasible, and we're going to pursue that pathway. Relative to use, or let's say a potential authorization as a universal booster, or as a booster on top of those, we believe that will require a traditional phase 3 program. May end up being done in conjunction, obviously, with a larger player that is already out there with a vaccine that is already authorized, et cetera, and you understand that. So we look at those. What would the timing be? Well, that would be dependent on what might evolve. Obviously, if we proceed successfully with immunocompromised, which right now it looks like we're doing, then we would see that there could be an opportunity that over the next few years, it won't be this year or next year, but over the next few years, we could see commercialization to begin to occur. For the universal booster, that would be a larger trial, and depending on who the partner would be and what the interest would be, that determines the pace of that, because it's driven by the investment that's put behind it, et cetera. Now, we are in continued discussions and negotiations with U.S. federal government funding agencies that are very interested, looking for next generation vaccines right now. The White House announced last spring what is known as Project NextGen, specifically looking for vaccines that were already in clinical development that could provide, or were providing, more robust, more durable responses, as well as meeting the needs of certain unserved populations. We feel that we're an ideal candidate for that, and we continue to be in discussions and negotiations with federal government agencies about participation in this, where we have a certain level of confidence in that regard, but obviously time will tell. And when and should we receive an award letter, then you'll be the first to know about it, because we'll announce it as quickly as possible, obviously.
Definitely,
So
definitely.
that's the time.
Yeah, we would look forward to to that, and then obviously we'll have another call, another chat with you at that point of time again, for sure. So okay, this is very interesting. So also, I mean, this arises one another question that are you looking for commercialization partners when I talk about immunocompromised, patients across the globe, or you planning to market by yourself? What would be a go-to market strategy specifically for immunocompromised patient? For
Sure.
healthy volunteers, boosters, I got the idea, and I think our audience would have understood, from the previous answer. But for specifically for immunocompromised patient, what would be a go-to-market strategy?
Sure. We have, first of all, strong IP behind all of our products, and we have worldwide rights for all of our products and technologies. Our business plan is, and we communicate this on a consistent basis, is we are developing for worldwide or global development, registration, and commercialization. But we will do that in conjunction with partners and collaborations. We started a year ago at the Biopartnering Europe spring meeting in Basel, and that kicked it off. We are quite active in discussions and ongoing discussions about partnering and collaboration, specifically within the immunocompromised when it comes to COVID-19, but also with our oncology assets. So we're quite active on there. Our team will be participating in the upcoming Biopartnering spring meeting this year. It's in Barcelona next month. And so the team will be over there. We were in most of the month of November, this past November, we were in Europe in certain discussions, including the Biopartnering fall meeting that was in Munich. So we're quite active in that regard. And you're absolutely right that for global commercialization, distribution, et cetera, it's critically important for us to have partners and collaborators on that. And that's what we're doing.
I think we've covered nearly all the bases for the geo vaccine. So I think we should not be leaving, the second molecule behind. And, it is actually an interesting conversation, but yeah, we have to move to the second molecule. So talking about Gedeptin, if I'm pronouncing it right.
We pronounce it Gedeptin.
Gedeptin. Okay. So Gedeptin, it's a treatment therapy, which is obviously, you are developing a vaccine, but this is a therapy for head and neck cancer. So, what can you talk about Gedeptin, in terms of its mechanism of action, how it works, a little bit of a basic, basically.
Sure, thank you. So we're extremely excited about the opportunity for the application of Gedeptin. Gedeptin is the brand name that was given to the technology. We in-licensed worldwide rights for all indications of this technology in the fall of 2021. We knew about the technology from previous involvement with the small company that had brought it forward, and we were very interested in it. Gedeptin, the name stands for gene-directed enzyme prodrug therapy. So that's GDEPT. And some advertising person came up with the concept that if you phonetically try to pronounce that, it's Gedeptin, so we call it Gedeptin. So that's where Gedeptin comes from. It goes beyond the initial indication. It's a technology that is tumor agnostic, meaning it's applicable to a tumor, whether it's cancerous or it could be a benign tumor, breast cancer tumor that you want to rid without having to do surgery, for instance, that type of thing. But the key thing is that it is a tumor, you're targeting a tumor that is needle accessible. With today's technology through medical devices, almost all tumors are needle accessible. The mechanism of action is that there is an enzyme, the E. coli PNP enzyme, is actually injected into a targeted tumor. Okay. Then a prodrug, which in this case is an existing FDA-approved drug called fludarabine phosphate. Fludarabine is approved as a hematologic chemotherapeutic agent. In and of itself, it does nothing against solid tumors. But when it encounters a tumor that has been treated with the PNP enzyme, it converts through the prodrug activity into a highly cytotoxic compound called fluoroadenine that destroys or significantly reduces the tumor. And so the concept is that by utilizing this, you can address targeted tumors and either reduce or eliminate them through this manner. Now, the initial indication, as we both have noted, is for patients with advanced head and neck cancer, but it's being developed by GeoVax for a broad use among solid tumors at different stages, early stage as well as advanced, and also in conjunction with certain agents such as immune checkpoint inhibitors. But let me focus on the initial program that we just announced the closure of the phase 1/2 trial. Is the reason why advanced head and neck cancers were picked is that word advanced means those patients that have failed on all other therapeutic modalities. So they may have had radiation, chemotherapy, surgery, whatever. They've been treated with, they have failed. In the United States, there are 15,000 individuals who die every year from head and neck cancer. That's the initial target population. To put that in perspective, there are 400 such thousand individuals worldwide, with a much greater prevalence in India and in China, and also in the Asia Pacific region. There are 900,000 new cases every year worldwide. There's 67,000 new cases of head and neck cancer in the US every year. But these are individuals who have failed on everything, and they're essentially on palliative care. They're on end stage. They're not going to live. And so the question the FDA raised was, is there something we can do for these patients that will improve their last stage quality of life? Can we reduce certain tumors so they can swallow food better and speak better? This is not a survival rescue trial. This is one that is trying to have an effect on it. So the markers we look at in the current trial, which we're now monitoring because it was fully enrolled, we closed the enrollment at year end of 2023, and in first half we anticipate reporting the final results and also what our plans are for an expanded phase 2 trial, as well as our discussions with the FDA about an expedited review. So that's where we are right now. But the mechanism of action is straightforward. The current trial was paid for or funded by the FDA, US FDA, under their program for orphan drugs clinical trials program. It was a small trial, but the phase 1 trial had demonstrated some, even though it was largely safety, but it was among the target population, it demonstrated consistent reduction in treated tumors. So the phase 1/2, I would call it, that we just closed, and so the statisticians are closing the database right now and analyzing the stuff. So that was intended to demonstrate to the degree that we could to reconfirm the safety, and also can we go to a higher dose among these to do an expanded phase 2, and perhaps the expanded phase 2, and we're talking about a trial of 40 to 60 patients is all, could be the basis for a registration with the FDA without having to do a phase 3 trial. So we've had previous discussions or previous discussion from the former company with the FDA resulted in guidance that said if we had consistent results in this phase 1/2, they would consider a phase 2 as the basis for approval. It needs to be expanded. So that's where we are right now. However, we plan to develop Gedeptin for other monotherapy, other solid tumor indications, and also we've been supporting the work of using Gedeptin in conjunction with immune checkpoint inhibitors, and it's showing that in that role in combination therapy, it's having an abscopal role and an enhancement role for the checkpoint inhibitor. So our current plans with our oncologists, and we just recently announced bringing on board a medical director of oncology who has significant experience in the field to guide us in how we further develop this very important technology, both as monotherapy as well as combination therapy. Looking strategic, long-term forward for GeoVax, we anticipate that oncology will play an increasingly much greater role for the company through the basis of the utilization of Gedeptin in different applications, both as mono and combination therapy. So that's where we're very excited about the Gedeptin opportunity. And as I said, it'll be in the first half of this year. We anticipate releasing reporting the results from this trial that we just closed at the end of December. And we'll also be reporting on our plans for the next stage of development of it, as well as our discussions with the FDA about the opportunity for an expedited basis for registration in this regard. So a lot going on this year in these two assets.
Exactly. I was about to say this, that there is a lot going on. There's going to be an exciting year for GeoVax from both the molecules perspective. And yeah, so just another question. I know you have mentioned this, but a little bit of a more deep dive. I wouldn't be a good questioner or interviewer if I don't, dig deep into the answers. So you spoke about that you are planning to go for multiple other tumors. You're planning to target, or this Gedeptin has applications in other solid tumors as well. So the way you picked head and neck cancer, what's going to be the second indication which you're going to move forward, and what would be the basis for that? I mean,
the initial indication are those patients who have advanced head and neck cancer. So they're the ones who have failed on everything. More than likely, it hasn't been decided upon right now, but that's what our advisors and our team are looking at. We've got an upcoming meeting on that. And I just was briefed on it yesterday. But I would consider that our next indication would be looking at earlier stage application for head and neck cancers, because that would make a lot of sense, because that's an area, it's a very competitive area, looking at those patients who have failed everything. So the advanced head and neck is not that competitive of a space. It's only 15,000 patients. It's orphan drug status. Moving into earlier stage head and neck, there's a lot of activity in the clinic going on. So other companies are trying to see if their technologies, if their drugs, their molecules have application in there. But we will be looking at earlier stage applications for that. So we're not always going to focus just on end-stage types of patients. That was literally picked because two reasons. One, there was a great need and it was not being addressed. So we thought we would qualify for orphan drug and have support of FDA. That happened. And secondly, that these were tumors that were easily addressable with the technology. So as a first step in there. But we think that as we have learned more and looked at it, We look at the earlier stage head and neck. The other area that's of a significant interest that we're having outside groups come to us with proposals on about clinical development, and we're actually working in protocol development right now in conjunction with them, in addition to the earlier stage head and neck, but it would be in triple negative breast cancer. There's high interest in the application there also. And we've got leading groups that are academic research groups in this area coming to us and talking about working together in conjunction, working with NCI funding, et cetera, all the types of parameters that go in. We're very interested in that. Again, as a small company, we have to stay focused. The first most important step, quite frankly, was for us to recruit an outstanding medical oncologist with the depth and experience, because a resident in the company was infectious disease and vaccine experience. And so we announced at the beginning of this year bringing in Dr. Mark Pipus as our Executive Medical Director for Oncology. He brings in significant experience at Dartmouth Medical Center, as well as in industry working in this field. So we put all the things in place. We've got an advisory board underway that is specific to oncology, and we've already got the schedule and putting together the beginnings of the protocol. So that's what we're working on and what we're looking at for further. We're most excited about the combination therapy because it appears to have a neoantigen effect when we utilize in conjunction with immune checkpoint inhibitors. So we think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there. So we've got discussions underway in that regard also. And again, I would say we hold worldwide rights for all indications. We're already in discussions with potential partners, for global development. As you mentioned, or as I mentioned, as we're talking about, when we look outside, especially in the Asia Pacific region, is a greater need. There's a higher prevalence of head and neck cancer. We were at the JP Morgan meeting like everybody else in our industry in January, and we specifically had outreach that we had not scheduled. That they came to us knowing about, I guess, our profile, and we met with individuals from that region of the world about the potential partner and collaboration of Gedeptin specifically and for development in those regions. So we're very interested in that, but we'll need to do that again in conjunction with partners and collaborators.
Amazing. Actually, David, let me, we are coming to the end of the discussion, but let me say it out loud. Uh, I mean, I can have a discussion for a very long time, but I know you are also busy. You have, upcoming meetings and all. So, just one last question before we conclude. We've learned all about GeoVax. We've learned about both the molecules, GeoVaccine as well as Gedeptin. I would love to know, and our audience would love to know personally about you, David. What would you love to do in your leisure time outside the office? So yeah, just a quick bit in your personal likes and dislikes.
Well, most of my time is heavily oriented around GeoVax. I mean, it's what I enjoy doing. I always point out I failed at retirement 3 times. And this, I've always had a strong affinity for vaccines and for these areas in which we're working. And it's sometimes, it's odd to think about you're getting paid for doing something that you thoroughly love and enjoy doing. And so I enjoy the people with whom I work. We've got a great team. You get so much out of that. But at the same time, I have a strong family relationship. My wife and I are grandparents. We've got grown children. We have 5 grandchildren, and that consumes a tremendous amount of time and energies. And even tomorrow morning, I'll be at an event where our 8.5-year-old granddaughter is reading an essay she wrote on the value of respect to the entire school. So we're proud of that. So those are things I like to do. I live on a little island in South Carolina that is on a river that goes out to the Atlantic Ocean. And when I find the time, I love to canoe there, and I find that really relaxing. It's something that's energetic and all. I try to catch fish, but I never do. And so I do canoeing, but I enjoy those types of activities. Hiking, I like to hike in the woods and those things. So I find that clears the mind, and interacting with colleagues, but family types of things are at the top of the list.
Awesome. Great having you with us, and we are hoping that we'll get time to talk to you again soon with good, more positive news from GeoVax, related to GeoVaccine, related to Gedaptin, new partnership, FD approvals, and so on and so forth. So sky's the limit for GeoVax, and thank you, David, for your time. It was lovely and very, very, very interesting talking to you. And yeah, I mean, thanks a lot.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. Have a good day or evening.
You too.